I have been watching videos on the potential of invasion of Australia during World War II by American commentators. The general concession is that they believe the Australian forces were very well ill-trained. In fact, our forces were excellently trained. We had a lot of experience from World War One, which was used in the campaigns in North Africa, Papua New Guinea and the Pacific Campaign. It's unfortunate that America believes that their allies and friends were no good at their job. Now, Australia had in place a force on the ground that would have acted as a militia should the Japanese had invaded. Also, if they had invaded, we had created what was called the Brisbane Line. Quite interestingly, if you watch the movie about Douglas MacArthur, starring Gregory Peck, it is made to think that General MacArthur invented and enforced the Brisbane Line. He did not. In fact, our force commanders and generals were highly experienced, very well trained, and more experienced, in fact, than MacArthur. The only difference between MacArthur and the Australian generals and admirals were the people available to him and the personnel and the amount of equipment and ability to move it. That was the only reason why MacArthur was superior, only because of the assets available to him, not because of his natural abilities. Our forces, our commanders, were just as, if not more, experienced than him. The general belief in America that Australia could not defend itself should we be invaded was also incorrect. We had hundreds of thousands of people ready to go at a moment's notice. We trained our people in Australia as a militia. We had extensive forces and contingency plans in place in Australia on the ground should the invasion occurred. Now, if you go up to Northern Territory, you can actually see all the airstrips they had available for use by Australian Air Force and Allied forces. You can also see massive dumps that were created for storage of arms and fuel and ammunition. These assessments done by Americans about our abilities during World War II are completely incorrect and shameful. I find it disappointing in general that the Americans think very little of the command and control ability, not only of the Australians but of the British. When you see this in media such as the movies and documentaries, Americans make you believe that they won the war. The reality is the Americans didn't get involved in the war until the end of 1941 when Pearl Harbor occurred. Now, they supplied Britain, but they did that in the hope that they didn't have to get involved. Now, if Britain hadn't even resisted Nazi Germany for 2 years, then America would have been on their own and it would have been a lot greater, different story. They wouldn't have been able to go to Britain to invade Europe and then take over Nazi Europe and bring democracy back to the world. But this could only occur because of the resistance carried out by Australia, Britain, New Zealand and other countries such as Canada. It's very rarely spoken about that America sat on the backbenches and watched the world go to war for 2 years. Even though they supplied the world, they did it in the hope that they didn't have to be involved. It's very shameful that America does this in the media, in the news, and on these YouTube videos. Also, they do it now currently in the war on terror. They never truly acknowledge the abilities or the successes of Allied forces in fighting the war on terror. They always seem to promote America's abilities and successes, but they never acknowledge the fact that Allied forces were also involved in those operations, and in many cases, their presence actually won the battle. It's very shameful, America, and you should acknowledge those who actually helped you, those who actually created this situation, particularly in World War II, which enabled you to successfully mount a campaign against Japan and Germany. Very shameful.